Evan, could you please? There we are. We are now streaming on Facebook. Hopefully, if people were there, they waited. Okay. The story that I'm telling tonight takes place in the time of King Solomon. So that gives you a little bit of an idea for a background. And in that time, there was a man named Babzi. And Babzi was not the kind of person that you would really want to know. For example, one day when he was paying his workers, he was giving them some money and decided, wait a minute, why am I paying you? Go away. And the worker says, well, this isn't charity, sir. This is money that we've earned. You know, we work for you. And Babzi smirked and said, yeah, well, if you're not my workers, I don't have to pay you. So you're all fired. Go. So he was known basically as one of the stingiest men in town. They said that he went to bed at sunset so he would never have to buy candles. He kept his house so cold in the winter you could see your breath because he didn't want to pay for firewood. And of course, he never married and had children because all they would do would cost him money. But even with all that, the people were having a terrible time believing the newest stories about him. You see, it was a very bad time in the land of Israel. There was little rain and the crops grew poorly and people were very hungry. Now, the richest families in the town opened their storehouses and gave food to everyone to be able to help everyone out. Not Babzi. Babzi, instead of sharing his grain, was selling it at higher and higher prices. And each day there was a longer and longer line of hungry people waiting for just something. And of course, he had no use for anyone who didn't have any money. Give you food, he said. Why should I give you food? I'm a businessman. I'm not here to give you anything. Now, if you want to buy some food. So the poor woman in front of him slowly slipped the wedding ring off of her finger to pay for some of the grain, while Babzi tossed a little half scoop of grain into her basket. And the little girl who was with the woman hoisted her mother's basket on the table and trudged back to the door. As she was waiting for her mother, a little brown sparrow landed beside her. She said, "You're just like me, little sparrow, looking for something to eat." So she gave the bird a few little grains from her bucket. She said, "But at least you don't have to deal with Babzi." She said, "I bet if Babzi would go hungry for just one day, he would be different." So the little bird continued to eat the little bit of grain that the girl had given him. And then when he was done, he smoothed his feathers and he flew away to King Solomon's palace. Now, many people know that King Solomon could talk to animals, but not everybody knew that he could also talk to birds. So the little bird came and landed on his shoulder and started talking to him. And King Solomon was saying, "Oh, no, really? Oh, how terrible." And the bird flew away. So the next day, King Solomon went to his chef and said, "I want you to prepare a great feast." And the chef was taken aback. "Sire, we're all, there's a famine going on. Are you sure you want to waste food?" "Oh, this food won't be wasted," said the king. "You'll see." The next day, Babzi received an invitation from the king to come to a banquet. He showed it off to everyone who was waiting in line to buy food from him. And he said, "Look, finally, the king is paying attention to me. I bet you I'm the richest man in the land, even richer than King Solomon. I wonder if the king wants to borrow money from me," he thought, frowning, but he decided, no, that can't be. So Babzi decided that he was going to really enjoy this feast. And in order to do that, he skipped breakfast and he skipped lunch because he wanted it to be as hungry as possible so he could eat all the wonderful food that he was sure the king was going to serve him. By the time he got to the palace, he was really hungry and was ready to eat. But when he was being walked into the banquet hall, the chamberlain who let him in said, "There are 3 rules that you have to follow in order to be with the king. One is if the king asks you if you're enjoying yourself, you have to be lavish in your praise. You have to tell him how wonderful everything is. Second, you can't request anything. And third, you're not allowed to ask any questions. Now, Bobbsey was so hungry that he didn't even really pay attention to that and just demanded, "When do we eat?" "Oh," said the Chamberlain. "What did I tell you about asking questions? Here, sit down in the room and wait for the king's arrival." So the Chamberlain left the room, leaving the door open to the palace kitchen where Bobbsey could see and smell and hear all the preparations being made for dinner. Then, what seemed to him like 2 or 3 hours later, King Solomon finally came into the banquet room. Bobbsey's stomach was growling and he felt a little faint. He barely answered the king's polite questions about the weather without drooling. Well, the first course was soup. Brought out a big, beautiful tureen of soup. Smelled wonderful. Bobbsey tied a napkin around his neck, and the servant put the soup in his bowl, and he was just about to put his spoon in it when the king said, "Tell me, are you enjoying the meal?" Remembering the Chamberlain's first rule, Bobbsey said, "Oh, your Majesty, it's the finest meal imaginable. Yes, the linen is wonderful. The spoons are beautiful." And King Solomon just seemed to glow with all the praise. And just as Bobbsey was about to put the spoon in the bowl, a servant whisked the bowl away. Bobbsey said, "Oh no, bad luck. I didn't even get to taste it. From now on, I won't talk so much." The next course was roast chicken being brought in. Oh, the aroma was so good. Bobbsey's mouth was starting to salivate. And when his plate was put before him, he was ready to pounce. But just then the king said, "How's everything? Need any salt?" "Oh, salt? No, I'm sure everything is perfectly seasoned." But before he could take a breath, the servant came by and whisked the plate away from Bobbsey. He didn't get a chance to eat anything at all. He was about to ask for it back, but then he remembered the Chamberlain's second rule, which was not to request anything. So he didn't. Bobbsey strained to keep up with King Solomon's pleasant conversation, while vegetable salad and dessert all made the briefest of appearances and were whisked away. After dinner, drinks were served, but not drunk. Stories were told, but not heard. And after midnight, a midnight mint that was not tasted, King Solomon offered Bobbsey an invitation to spend the night. And of course, a royal invitation could not be refused. So Bobbsey was led into a beautiful, sumptuous palace room, but he was too miserable to enjoy it. His head ached. His stomach was making the most growling sound, and the tears that rolled down his cheeks were the only thing that he had to eat since the night before. Why was he being treated like that? Bobbsey wondered, but he knew he couldn't even ask to find out what was wrong. Finally occurred to him that all his trouble started when he received the invitation from King Solomon. And why had he received the invitation from King Solomon? Because he was rich. Suddenly, Bobbsey had this great urge to give away all his money. The next morning, the king was amused to hear that Bobbsey had left the palace before sunrise. The king laughed and said, "He didn't even stay for breakfast. Must be a very, very busy man." And he was. That day in front of Bobbsey's house was the usual long line of people, but on this morning they were all receiving heaving buckets of grain from his very own hands. In fact, when the little girl and her mother approached, Bobbsey patted the child on the shoulder as he urged her to take more and more grain. Long after the famine had ended, people remained mystified about Bobbsey's new enthusiasm for charity, for tzedakah. He was so eager to give away every bit of his fortune that he even coaxed the neighborhood birds to come by throwing out handfuls of grain so they could eat it. And that little bird that had gone to King Solomon amused his friends by telling the story of what happened when King Solomon had invited Bobbsey to his palace. As for Bobbsey, he was just pleased to know that a poor man like him was never, ever, ever going to be invited to a royal feast again. So that's our story about Bobsy. Next week is actually the week before Passover, so we will be having a Passover story next week, which is actually one of my favorites. And I'm now going to turn this over to Rabbi Barbara so she can lead us in Havdalah.
I'm putting the text in the chat, and I need to figure out how we do that to share it on Facebook as well in the future, so that they'll have the ability to have the text as we do for Havdalah. So as we begin Havdalah, we will be adding another prayer at the end as well, as I did last night, to be able to mark 1 year of our being online. We didn't start Havdalah right at the beginning. We started it a little bit later, but to be able to have the ability not only to separate Shabbat from the rest of the week, but to mark this moment of really going into our 2nd year of being home and sharing this way, and are starting to venture out. And as we know where we've been, and we know the gifts we've had, as somebody else said, I never used to do Havdalah before, but it's been nice for us to be together. I noticed last week when there was the highest Shabbat, that I think a big part of our coming together for Havdalah is our being able to talk with each other and see each other and be a community. And being part of 500 people for Havdalah, even with all the little boxes, didn't feel quite the same, I think, for some. So, we will keep our intimate group, and we'll have to figure out when we can do things together, if there may be times we may gather together as well in person and not only on the computer. So I'm going to light my candle, and I invite you to light yours as well. And thank you, Rabbi Escherman, for your stories and your storytelling as a part of what we've become very happy with and used to. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. La 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 la, ya la 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 la, la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen, borei peri hagafen. And we're going to follow Rabbi Escherman's way of doing this and take a sip of the wine now. There are just 2 different ways of doing it. I've done it both ways, and it's okay both ways. We continue now, as we've tasted the sweetness of Shabbat, to savor the sweet smells as we savor the smells of Shabbat and the sweetness for the week. Jody, we're going to have you bottle all the great smells of it when you're visiting your daughter and bring them back to us as well. Maybe you'll find something else to be your besamim from there. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei minei v'samim, borei minei v'samim. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. We cherish the light, the flame, the warmth, the illumination of it, as tonight also marks the night that we spring forward. And so we move forward into daylight savings time. I always forgot which time of year was or wasn't, but we move forward and have more hours of light to enjoy. So as we savor the light of Shabbat and the warmth of Shabbat, we think of the increasing amount of light that will be in our lives. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei me'orei ha'esh borei me'orei ha'esh ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol ben or lechoshech ben yom hashvi'i l'sheshet yemei Hamaseh Baruch atah Adonai Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol. So as we mark and make the distinction between the seventh day and the days of the week, I also offer a special Havdalah blessing for ending the first year of the COVID pandemic. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign and healer of all, who distinguishes between life and death, between light and dark, between healing and sickness, between times of health and times of plague. Blessed are you, Adonai, who distinguishes between hope and despair. And this prayer was written by Hila Batsabi with Ritual Well, and was shared this week, earlier in the week, when they marked the date on the 11th. So we now take that last moment to savor before we then put the candle out in the wine. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Bimheira v'yameinu, Yahavo Eleinu. Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi. I invite you to unmute and join with me. And I'll get my voice back in a moment to wish one another a good week of Shavua Tov. This is what happens when you think you have your voice back and you almost do, but okay. Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavuato, 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 a good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. A good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. I wish everyone a Shavua Tov, a good week.
And a very good week for Jody and safe travels.
Safe trip, Jody.
Yes, and